Welcome to the Anderson and Lindhardt Show. This is episode 37. In this episode, we are joined by Lance Brown. Lance is an expert on influence. We discuss and explore some ideas that he's developed about how to increase your influence. There is so much valuable information in this episode, and we're excited for you to have the chance to hear it. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless y'all. And this is episode 37, man. All right, it's all you.
All right, welcome back, Anderson Lindhardt Nation. This is episode 37. So it's pretty exciting. This weekend, me and Reese are actually going to hit our full year of recording episodes. So we'll have been a year of doing this. So we're really excited. And to celebrate, one of the people that we're having come on is a professor. Can we say Professor Lance Brown?
You can call me Professor.
Professor Lance Brown, the legend himself. How are you doing today?
So good, guys. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. 37 episodes in. I'm impressed. I think everybody at some point in their life, myself included, thinks, you know what, I'd like to do a podcast someday. You guys are actually doing it, and you're showing it. And way to go. It's an honor to be with you.
Man, well, thank you. Yeah, that's a big compliment, because it's true. Like growing up, in this era, it's just podcasts were everything. And you, after like having great conversations with friends, you'd be like, dude, we should just do a podcast. And after Carter and I said that like 100 times, just talking to each other, it's like, all right, let's just actually do it, man. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's fun because then I can meet people like you and kind of network a little bit. So it's exciting.
Yeah, way to go.
All right, so we want to get to know you a little bit. So tell us a little bit about, kind of yourself growing up, kind of where you're from, what you did maybe in high school, and then you can tell us a little bit about your mission, and then college, and then kind of what's brought you to this point.
Sure. So I grew up in the thriving metropolis of Kanab, Utah. Carter, have you ever been to Kanab?
I feel like I played their basketball team one time.
I feel like I have to look that up on a map to see where it is.
We're a great stop on the way to Lake Powell. When you need to use the bathroom, you usually
yes,
that urge around Kanab, and then you're just an hour and a half away from
there's
glorious Lake Powell.
So Kanab's like in the middle of nowhere.
Little dot on the map in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, and my first love growing up was athletics. Grew up in a small town. This was before YouTube. You just played every sport, and that's what I did with my buddies. And it was one of those kind of childhoods where your mom and dad would say, just be back before dinner, and we just would terrorize the entire town, and just made sure we were washed up and back ready for dinner. So had an idyllic upbringing. Grew up in an awesome family. It was phenomenal. So, but after a church mission to Miami, I wish you could have seen me on my first day in Little Havana. I'm like from Kanab to Miami. I was like, I don't think we're in Kansas.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it was an absolute eye opener, a great experience in my life. And when I came back, I had a leadership scholarship to Southern Utah University, and did 4 years there. So while I was getting through school, I was home like a month, and you guys have had this experience too. And all the summer sales recruiters started to descend. Well, a girl I'd grown up with handed me a flyer that said, pizza meeting, living scriptures. And she said, you would do well at this. And I looked at it and I thought, yes, I would. And I dove into that head first. That was the beginning of a 12-year term with living scriptures. And so
for those that might not know, do you want to kind of explain what the living scriptures are?
Sure. So these were animated Bible stories, Book of Mormon stories, and they also did a series called The Hero Classics. But it was a former Walt Disney producer named Richard Rich. He directed Fox and the Hound and Winnie the Pooh.
No way! Wow.
Dragon, yeah. And so So he obviously knew the power and influence that animation had on young children, the colors, the story, the music, the script. And man, this company should have never happened. The story of Living Scriptures is a remarkable one we can maybe talk about another day. But it was something that I thought, I believe in that. Like, I can sell that. I grew up with those, and I'm like, even a klutz from Kanab can sell these, right? And so it's where I never really saw myself as a sales guy early. I just thought I could just go into homes and say, this is why I would do it, you know? And it was very natural and genuine for me to endorse, and really surprised myself my first summer. We just start families on this DVD a month plan. They get a DVD and a coloring book for $30. And I was trembling the first door that I knocked. I mean, I was thinking there was a serial killer behind there waiting to abduct me. And I had developed all these boogeymen in my head, and every door I knocked, I had that pit in my stomach. But one day it just kind of flipped. I stopped thinking about me and my goals and my ambitions. And I started waking up thinking, how can I serve? Like how can I help lift and edify and change people's day? And that fear and anxiety kind of gave way to enthusiasm. I was excited to see who is behind the door. And once that clicked, once that switched in my mind, I became deadly. And it was very much a service mentality. And I ultimately became the national sales director for that company, where I recruited, trained, and managed probably over 700 sales guys. And
wow.
I got okay at selling them, but my real strength was selling people on selling them. Because of the growth and the development that happened for me personally through that experience, I was really passionate about that, and giving people the opportunity to go out, do something hard, make what they're worth, and learn, fortitude, and learn how to influence people, learn how to, get outside their comfort zone. And so, I did that for a long time. It wasn't until somebody recruited me to start at Dixie State University. And I just thought, man, this was all I knew. I got to see what else is out there in the world. That's what led me to what I'm doing now, which is I'm a development officer and adjunct professor at Dixie State University.
Cool. I wanted to say something real quick just about door to door. So I did pest control in 2020, so last summer. And I would say, like, to anyone who's listening, like you said, I mean, we're from Utah, you come home from a mission and then you just get swarmed by the recruiters. But honestly, if you've even like considered it, I would listen to them, because though, like, when I came back from door to door, part of me really wanted to go back, but my wife was like, no, let's just like not do it again. So I didn't do another summer. And I kind of realized maybe it's not fully for me, but I'd never regret it. And like you said, you learn so much. Like you said, fortitude stuck out to me, because I'm like, oh yeah, mental, emotional, and physical fortitude, and spiritual as well. You're having to pray to get through the day. But it's, if you've ever even just slightly considered it, whoever's out there, then just go out to lunch with one of these guys and listen to them and think about it, pray about it, because I don't regret going. I'm so grateful I went. I learned so much, and learned it in a way that worked well for me. And I don't know if I would have ever learned these skills that fast any other way. I mean, 3 months, learned a lot. So definitely consider it for those people.
Sponsored by Active Pest Control.
Not a sponsor. Thankfully, I was up in Logan at the time, so we no, the active guys, they don't come up there. So I went with Fox Pest Control. Not a sponsor. Just kidding.
My big thing is I would push anybody to do it. Unfortunately, Living Scripture's summer sales program, which they really pioneered the concept. It's been going on for 40 years. I mean, it went like Living Scriptures, then like insulation, then you kind of saw the pest control thing happen, and then alarms and satellites. And I mean, these guys were at the root of it, and I would encourage anybody to do it. But after 40 years, they moved obviously to just online streaming, and that was 2 years after I left. But, but you're right, you learn a ton, and I would encourage it. My big thing is, it's just like, make sure you believe in the product, because if you're
Oh, for
passionately
sure.
talking somebody into something and you wouldn't personally do it, if you wouldn't recommend it to grandma, there's an integrity issue. There's a disconnect, right? But if it's something you
Exactly.
fully believe in, it becomes more of a service mentality.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay with me. So
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
why I haven't jumped into any of that. It's just because I'm like, I don't know if I could get into that mentality, selling pest control or serving or solar or, TV stuff. It's just like I don't know if I could get myself into that mentality to, be really that passionate about it. I feel like I wouldn't be that into that.
yeah, it's smart to listen to that. And there's so many ways to learn these different principles, but like you said, you kind of learn them fast when you're forced to sink or swim, Reese. And so
Yeah, no, definitely. You are like faced with that. I don't know. It's almost like the decision. It's like, all right, you can either, wallow in self-pity because your back hurts and you've been walking for so long and no one's talking to you, or you can, choose the other perspective, and that's a lot more enjoyable. And so, yeah, it really teaches you a lot of valuable skills very quickly. Like I said, like a condensed brutal 3 months, but it goes by in a flash. And then you're like, okay, that was actually pretty good. Made money, met people, learned skills. And it's funny, my first mission president, he sold Bible stories when he got home from his mission, little books that would go over the Bible stories. And he did those door to door for a year or for two, I think 1 or 2 summers. But yeah, like that's seriously like the pioneering of door to door. It's like scripture stuff.
So Reese, those were living scriptures as well.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So the full story is Orrin Hatch. You guys remember the Utah senator, longtime senator? He was in law school and did some legal work for the Seventh-day Adventists. They couldn't afford to pay him, so they gave him the rights to these stories, these inspirational stories that taught good morals and ethics. And he didn't know how. He had these friends that were selling door-to-door dry cleaning. He said, "You guys, can we do anything with this?" He said, "Yeah, we can sell that. We know how to sell door to door." That was the very first product, and that was how Living Scriptures are formed. But then they decided to dramatize the Book of Mormon. So think like 300 actors, sound effects, voices, and and then they did the Bible stories and they did books. And anyway, and then they actually didn't get into animation until much later. And in fact, the cost just to fund the very first one, Nephi and the Brass Plates, cost more money than all the money it took to build the entire product line up to that point. So had that gone bad, had there not been an appetite for that, the whole thing would have been in jeopardy. And wow, the leap of faith, and people really liked animated Jesus. And but they got some kickback on that too, because people are. People like it pure, like their doctrine pure, and when you've got little cartoons quoting but I think they did it right. So
no, anyway, they did great. And I grew up on them. So that's, my family, we had all the VHS tapes lined up, and on Sunday we would get home from church and open it up and we would just watch them for hours. I loved them so much. And so
I knew I liked you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
Lance was the one at your door that sold your mom on those the monthly subscription.
I got $300 commission off of you, right?
There you go. So before we kind of get into more principles and stuff like that, I just kind of wanted to introduce kind of how we kind of came into to interact with you. So my family moved to St. George while I was on my mission, and they happened to move into Lance's ward. So to me, he's Brother Brown. That's just kind of what he's always been. When he came home, he was in the bishopric, and so he was just kind of always there in the ward. And just because he's very involved in the Dixie State community and in athletics, he's been someone that I've been connected with, whether it's kind of asking about opportunities or whether it's for assignments, kind of picking his brain on career opportunities and advancements. And it's just happened to work out. He's just been a good influence for me to have down here, a really good connection, and someone that I've been able to look up to. And just recently I've had the opportunity to kind of go and start working with him in the development department. And so it's been really cool. And just as I've been able to continue to get to know him and kind of what he stands for and what he's passionate about, it was just made clear to me and Reese that he's someone we need to have on here, and someone that we definitely feel like our listeners. So right now, just our moms. No, I'm just kidding. But but
Hey,
that our
Brandon,
listeners,
how are you? Good to
that
Let's tell the real story, Carter, because Carter got home from his mission and I'd never met him. I knew his parents, but he gave a phenomenal talk when he got back. And I just thought that's a dude that's got it figured out already at a pretty young age. And I just basically made a job for him. I recruited him into doing what to coming and working with us because I just knew he had the it factor. And so we're just kind of new into this, but we're gonna accomplish some amazing things at Dixie State. So glad you decided to trust in me a little bit. If I could ever be in town, right? I got back from Wisconsin for a few days. I'm here today, but then I go to Vegas for a few days. And Carter's like, "What am I doing? Where are you, Lance?"
He's like, "Dude, I never see you. What the?"
No, it's fun. It's been a good job so far. Been able to make some really cool connections just in the few weeks I've been there. Been able to work on some skills that I not didn't know that I needed to work on, and being able to kind of round myself out as a person. It's been really cool. So I'm grateful for it, and like Lance said, we'll be able to do some really cool things. So kind of like getting into that, you kind of have a little bit of a side passion / side hustle / just really cool part of your life that I don't think a lot of people that maybe just know you from church, or maybe people that just know you from Dixie State kind of know that you have. So do you kind of want to introduce like this side passion? I don't even know if you call it side passion, because I feel like it's one of your main passions.
No, it is my main passion, but well, I love what I'm doing at Dixie State University. It's a total blast to be part of the essentially the center of this community. I've spent the last 4 or 5 years fundraising for an expansion on our football stadium. So we did it. We found $20 million to build a multi-story structure that'll have a press box and executive suites and club seating, hospitality space, a brand new locker room. It's going to be a game changer. And it's been fun to be a part of that and all the growth and phenomenal things that are happening here. But yeah, I really missed from my Living Scriptures days that the coaching and the mentoring and the being with people and helping people. And so we used to do this big sales training every year, called it Sales School, 3-day thing. And we'd bring people in and to get everybody all motivated and psyched up. And then they would talk for an hour, get everybody all jazzed. And then they'd walk out. We'd give them a $5,000 check. And I was left with implementation. Like I had to help all 100 guys through the summer. And I'm like, that's the gig I want. That guy's taking a check and walking out the door,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've been working on content for a few years now. I've got a couple presentations pretty dialed in, and I've moved into the professional speaking business. I just gave a keynote last weekend at the St. George Art Summit. I think it went really well, and yeah, do what you love and get paid for. That's where it is. So I'll continue to work at Dixie State. I absolutely love it, but I like the idea of being able to kind of grow something on the side, kind of, do more or less with that depending on family demands and other things. And so yeah, that's pretty new. And you're right, Carter. Not many people know about that.
So when you say that you've been formulating, kind of some scripts or some presentations, what are kind of the ones that you like, the topics of the things that you've kind of been formulating to this point in your life?
I've been working on a concept for a long time, and I call it the influence formula. I noticed that people desperately want more influence in their life, whether it's trying to get their children to cooperate or trying to grow a podcast or get a promotion or run for public office.
Or get a girlfriend. That's mine.
Get a girlfriend. We're gonna work on your issues here today,
Yeah.
Carter. So,
Not the first time we've done that on the podcast. I'm just kidding.
It's just how to solve Carter's issues.
Hey, I've got some really cute girls in my class, man. I need to get you to come to my class.
I'll speak. I'll be a guest speaker in your class.
Not a bad idea.
All right, yeah, this guy doesn't go to school, but he's gonna come speak to you at school right now. So
Hey,
be
you're
a
getting
little,
done, man.
yeah.
You have much to offer. But yeah, so I've seen how people go about it wrong. We just talked about summer cells. I mean, I could write a book, and people try to intimidate, they try to manipulate. Probably the most common is people incentivize. And I just, through observance, literally of 20 years, and then, an academic study throughout my master's degree and everything else, I feel like I've really kind of cracked the code. The code's pretty simple, but the application, takes time and can be difficult. But yeah, so my signature message is called the influence formula.
So for someone, kind of pretty new into the self-help and self-development world, I think that's like a really cool kind of foundation for them to build, like, because the way that you influence people is like the basis of everything. If you interact with someone, you're going to influence them for good or for bad, every single person that you come into contact with. And so to be able to kind of start to develop that thought process of, all right, I'm gonna work on my influencing, is a pretty cool concept. So when you kind of meet someone, or someone is a little bit newer to it, or you're just introducing it, what's kind of the first thing that you want them to start with, to be able to, like, all right, this is what we can kind of build off of to develop your ability to influence people?
So I've got a quiz on my website. It's a personality kind of assessment, and it's called the Influence Spectrum Quiz. And in order, just quickly, maybe to back up and explain the concept a little bit, to have lasting influence with others, people must see within you a combination of both credibility and relatability. So in order to have influence with others, they need to see within you a combination of credibility and relatability. Some people get a little bit lopsided. So if you go to my quiz, you can see whether you rely on one of those kind of pillars or the other. And the symbols I use for credibility is like a rocket scientist. Like, those are things, your credibility or your credentials, the things you can put on a resume, right?
Okay.
Awards, certificates, notoriety, education, degrees, things that you've received. Your relatability, I actually use the comedian as the symbol. So if you go to my quiz, you're either a rocket scientist or a comedian, or you're balanced. And a comedian, think about like your buddies, your roommates that just get you. You feel totally comfortable and at ease, and you could spend all day with them, and they're just easy to get along with. But maybe they don't have the attributes that you respect or admire, and you may not really look up to them. A great example is like, have you guys ever seen the Saturday Night Live sketch with Chris Farley where he plays a motivational speaker?
I haven't seen that one. But
No,
no.
this is the most watched Saturday Night
Oh,
Live
wow.
sketch of all time. And it's a hilarious premise, because this guy is tasked to inspire young people to live a life of productivity, success, and fulfillment. But himself, he's a total loser. He lives in a van down by the river. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so it's so ironic, and yet people do that every day. They're trying to give financial advice, but they're broke. They can't even make their own rent. Or they're trying to give health advice, right? They know the next genius juice or powder or whatever that's going to transform your health, but they're 400 pounds, and you're looking at each other like, you breathe heavy walking upstairs. I'm not taking health advice from you, right? And so people will find out from my quiz where their gaps are. So if you're heavy on credibility but struggle relating to others, if you're very linear, then you have a connection gap, is what I call it.
Okay.
And if you're really good at relating to people, think your popularity, you're the head cheerleader, or you're the star quarterback or whatever, not so much the valedictorian, then you're heavy on the relatability side. But maybe people don't look up to you, admire, or respect you. So I call that an admiration gap. So you ask where I start, Carter. I have people take a quiz and we kind of see where they lean. This asks questions like, when electing political leaders, do you give more weight to their accomplishments or whether they align with your values? Or you get more accomplishment out of accomplishing, or more fulfillment out of accomplishing tasks, or, out of the relationships you maintain. And you can kind of get a sense for where you are. So
I'm curious, where do most people fall? Like, with the people that you've had take the test, like what would you say the percentages are for balanced, relatable, and credible?
So I have 5 categories. You're either like an extreme rocket scientist, a moderate rocket scientist, balanced, moderate comedian, or extreme comedian. Most people are in the moderate categories. So you're either kind of a moderate comedian. You rely primarily on your charm, your ability to read people, understand people, and draw people to you that way. Or they're a moderate rocket scientist where but I don't see a lot on the extremes, to think of an extreme like Tiger Woods. I've read a couple biographies from Tiger Woods, and obviously we know him as the greatest golfer to have ever lived. I mean, he's got extreme credibility. Like when it comes to sports performance, particularly hitting a dimpled white ball down a long, narrow fairway, there may have never been anybody that have lived that can do it as well as him. But he's kind of a jerk, and he's very linear, and he kind of judges all people by that standard, right? He doesn't see them as genuine, human beings, and he's pretty off-putting that way. So he's pretty limited, really. I mean, but just from his pure credibility, I guarantee you'd rather have him on this podcast today than me, right? But in a lot of aspects of his life, you probably wouldn't admire him or look up to him much, right. And he may after time kind of lose quite a bit of influence with you, because you're like, I don't want to be like that. Like I don't want to model my life after him. So it's not very often I get extremes. But they're out there.
Yeah, it seems like extremes are more rare. Like another athlete that comes to mind, not anymore. If you look him up now, he's a completely different person. But Mike Tyson, I mean, just a psychopath. And like, I've researched his life a little bit because it's so fascinating. It's like, what brings you to like bite off a chunk of someone's ear? I mean, that's just insane. And then bite his other ear, 2 minutes later in the same fight. It's just like, what is wrong with this guy? But I mean, he's just extreme. And if you watch interviews of him now, this is just like off topic, but it's interesting. He says that he used to cry before fight night because he did not like the person he would turn into in the rink. So really? he actually didn't like that guy. And he actually started, he had a mentor who was in his 70s when Mike Tyson was, I think, 16, around there. This guy started mentoring him. He's like, we're going to make you into the best heavyweight boxer to ever live. And he started doing hypnosis. He would be taken to a hypnotist, and he said they would tell me, they would get me into the state and then tell me that when you're in the ring, you knock people out, you kill, you're the lion, like all this crazy stuff. But anyways, fascinating athlete to go research. And now he's like this down to earth pothead guy who just is like,
really?
Yeah. But it's just, it is, there are extreme personalities out there, but yeah, it's just by purely observing, humans, it seems like most people are kind of like this mixed up ball of a bunch of stuff, and then every once in a while someone just super extreme comes out, and then they turn out to be the best golfer or the best boxer, and you see that.
Can you imagine the degree of isolation that he had to experience in order to do that? Like, he was cut off from the rest of the world. And yeah, Tiger was the same way. Like, his dad wouldn't let him play soccer. Like, he wanted to play like normal sports with other your golfer. He hung out at country clubs with old people.
Yeah.
And his dad literally trained him into an assassin, and Tiger's gotten better as well, because he's he went to therapy and all sorts of things and he's he's a lot more liked on tour now and has been softened a little bit. But these people that spend all their time in just one narrow field, it doesn't matter if you have the best idea in the world. If you can only speak one language, right? If you can't relate to people outside your narrow niche, you're going to be pretty limited. And so, this is for all your high IQs out listening. If you're ever talking and you see people's eyes just kind of glazing over, there's a disconnect, right? You need to stop immediately and insert like a football analogy or something.
Yeah.
So the layman can get it, right? Sometimes we get drowned in our own expertise, and the most influential people I've ever met are people that are brilliant, but they also are they're not out of touch. They're able to convey that, distill that in a way that a broad audience can understand, and they can simplify concepts. So I mentioned, like with my topic specifically, I've gone down this crazy rabbit hole of influence, and I spent 3 years researching it. And what was even harder was trying to get it to just bite-sized concepts. And I'm still working on this. That's where I came up with the formula. Like, hopefully that's simple enough that, like, my freshman business students can get it and comprehend it. And that's an art in and of itself, being able to take what you know, but put it in a way that other people can know and relate as well.
Yeah, that has been, that's difficult. It definitely is an art. And I would consider yourself an artist if you're able to do that, because, I mean, as you can see, I like to read.
Yeah.
My wife's books are on the bottom shelves, but all these ones are mine. And so I really like to read, and I learn all this amazing stuff. And I'm really into fitness. I'm actually getting certified to be a personal trainer right now.
Cool.
Yeah. So a lot of exciting stuff that you're learning, and it'll click in my brain and I understand it, but I don't understand it well enough, because I think it was Albert Einstein said something like, you don't understand something well enough until you can teach it to a 5-year-old, and then they can understand it. And so it's like, that is definitely an art. And I think that for sure is something that increases your influence, because I know, so I love Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson. Yeah, I love him so much. I read his books. I listen to his lectures on and on and on. But I know a lot of people who don't like him because he'll dumb stuff down a little bit, but he still keeps it pretty high. And it can be difficult to understand. And so, I mean, obviously he has an absolutely enormous influence, I'm not taking away from that, but I do know a few people who are like, man, I tried to read his book or listen to his lectures, and it's just hard to get into it, because it's a little bit above their pay grade. And I'm like, oh yeah, trust me, like, you have to like get into a meditative state, turn off everything. But I think people who have just gotten it down for the most part of how to understand things so well that they can teach it, I would say in like at least 5 different levels, from 150 IQ to just your little 5-year-old kid. That's when you really know something. And that's when your, what would you say, your spectrum, I guess, of influence is at its peak, because you can hit all those different groups of people, because everyone has different levels of understanding. And so that's a really good point. Something that I consciously am trying to work on, especially with being a personal trainer.
Yeah.
I'm starting to visualize how my career is going to go. And I'm like, I know I get so excited about these things. I understand them so deeply, but this person that I'm working with, they just want to stay in shape. They don't care about all the tiny details, of like, oh, this chemical reacts this way in your brain and causes you to feel this way. It's like, they don't care about that. They just want me to tell them exactly what to do, and in a simple way that they get. And so I think that's a good point to always remember, and to think about, like, practice. How can I explain this more simply? Or how could I explain this to like my 10-year-old sister and have her understand it, or whatever. So that's great. And then one thing real fast, what's your website?
LanceWBrown.com. Thanks for that.
Yep. Yeah. I want to make sure, because I want to check it out for sure. And I want to make sure if anyone's listening and wants to. So LanceWBrown.com.
Yep. Yeah. I'm
Awesome.
curious whether you guys are
Yeah, we'll have to go take the
comedians or
quiz.
rocket scientists.
Well, yeah, right as you said that, I think I was like, man, I think I'm probably
I
around
probably am the
moderate.
moderate comedian.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit around there, hanging around moderate comedian. I'm starting to build up the credibility and learn how to implement that into my influence / personality. But yeah, I think Carter and I are both really good at relating with people.
Sure.
And yeah, it's easy to get lopsided, you know.
It tends to. You guys are young, and usually you don't have a stacked resume line
Yeah.
when you're 25.
It's like I mowed lawns for a couple summers. I was a line cook at Burger King, and that's how I served the mission. And so yeah, it's like credibility. Definitely. I mean, you need time. It's an exchange, if you're investing your time, wisely. So
Well, what I tell people that are young is I'm like, just get good at something. Like, you don't have to be good at everything. Like when I was out trying to influence people selling living scriptures, like they had years of experience over me, but I knew my product. Like I knew my thing. And I was absolutely credible when it came to that. So make sure, you pick your kind of lane first.
yeah.
And just get really good at that, and then sometimes you can leverage that a little bit, but you got to start somewhere. And and one of the other interesting things is your influence isn't static, so like it can vary depending upon the context. For instance, some people can have all the credibility in the world in once, or all the influence in the world in one setting, like maybe as a boss at work, only to find they have very little in another setting, like at home with a teenager, right?
Yeah.
And this proves to be very frustrating because we think, oh, well, I'm good at basketball. I'm probably good at politics too. Well, it's like, no, America's saying no. Like LeBron, stay on the court, man. Like, you're good at that.
Exactly.
But you haven't spent a career, studying social and political issues, and that's where a lot of times we make errors, is we try a little hard to go from one context to another and maintain our credibility. And it's like, and just pick a lane first, start there. I think health and fitness is a phenomenal one, and I'm passionate about that too.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm very passionate about it, and yeah, and I was actually, Carter and I think talked about this last podcast, but Jordan Peterson kind of went through the psychoanalysis of the movie Peter Pan, and it was in a lecture, but an artist, a musical producer named Akira the Don, took the lecture and put like a cool, beautiful music behind it. So it's like 3 minutes. It's very cool to listen to. But if you just go on YouTube, for anybody who wants to go watch it, just search Sacrifice by Akira the Don and Jordan Peterson. Anyways, the psychoanalysis analysis is basically that Peter Pan is a boy who doesn't want, doesn't want to grow up. He doesn't want to pick that lane, because as a child, you can be anything. You're full potential, right? You can be anything you want, and you have to sacrifice the fact that you can be anything. You have to trade that in for picking something, and that's the price you pay when you become an adult. That's the price. And he talks about how you need to pick something, or else you're just going to be a 40-year-old kid, and that's not a good thing. And so yeah, and so being in this age, 22, like early 20s, I feel Peter Pan's apprehension. It's like, I am kind of scared to pick one thing, because I'm so used to being in high school and middle school where you can be anything you want and the world is completely yours, but you have to trade that in for one thing. And so I get why Peter Pan and he gets the Lost Boys who come to him because they feel that apprehension. And then finally Wendy is the first one to step up and make that sacrifice of her ultimate potential to choose a path. Anyways, I've thought a lot about that idea, so it's interesting you bring that up, because this is exciting stuff. It's just like 2 weeks ago I kind of had it click inside my soul that I thought, man, I've been obsessed with health and fitness for like 6-7 years now. I should do this. I freaking love it. And for some reason, my brain just like thought it was just something I like to do on the side.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kept thinking about this Peter Pan idea. It's like, yeah, you gotta, you know, you don't want to rush yourself too much, but you do need to pick something, especially while you're in your 20s. I think that's kind of the decade of, okay, what am I going to be? And it doesn't mean you're never going to change lanes in the future. You know, you never know what's going to happen, but yeah, definitely picking something helps you focus. You can get a clearer aim. You're going to progress further. You're going to network further. You're going to learn more about yourself and about others, and you're going to be able to help more people, on and on and on. So really, really interesting idea, and
That's fascinating.
something worth thinking about.
I actually feel like it's my 30s where I'm learning how to say no. You know, I have so many interests as well, and it is hard because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to a
To a lot of things. Yeah, you're
things.
saying yes to one thing and no to like a million things. So it's crazy.
And sometimes you look back and you're like, dang, you know, I still like that part of me, and I kind of want to get it back, but I've, you know, like raising a family. I've got 5 kids, and they demand a ton of my time, and I feel like a lot of times I'm missing out on certain opportunities because of it. But ultimately, you know, I've made that decision, and I'm going to own it. And I think that'll ultimately, knowing me and my values and what I stand for, will probably bring me the most joy. But there's still days where it's like, crap, so and so's there and doing this and earning this and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's really a battle. But you know, back to kind of the being, you know, specialized versus well-rounded thing. I think you always want to keep a pulse on all the different areas that interest you, and maybe explore some that don't. Well, you don't go really deep. I love the imagery of, have you ever heard being a T? Like you're, you know, you don't want to be an I, you want to be a T. So you want to be deep, you know, in one area, but then along the cross, like you want to have breadth as well. You want to have depth.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And breadth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're just an eye and you're only good at golf and nothing else, or fighting people in a ring,
yeah,
nothing else,
yeah,
like you'll be limited. And so these little experiences we get, you know, I noticed you guys talked about the value of public education yesterday, or in your last episode. And I think there's still value in going to school for that well-roundedness, like the general education. People are like, we got to get on with it and whatever. But you know, those little things come back into play in my life, and they help me connect dots, and they make me, you know, they give me a diverse around array of experiences. And in today's day, more than ever, I'm afraid our ability to relate to others is plummeting. You know, we live in a day of echo chamber thinking and specialization and tribal mindset. And if you marinate in one environment for too long, you're going to be very linear. And so I think it's good to be forced a little bit to learn areas that aren't natural and comfortable. I had one professor that said, if it comes easy to you, if it's natural to you, you're not learning, you're just reconfirming things that you already know. You know, we call that confirmation bias. He said, but if it's stretching you and it's pushing you and you're thinking, what is this? How's this going to benefit me? This is so stupid. And those are kind of my thoughts, but it's like, okay, I'm actually learning because it hurts, you know?
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuck with me. And, you know, obviously as a summer sales guy, I'm glad that I developed a specialization in sales and marketing, but that I still kind of gathered that well-roundedness that allowed me to kind of have that balance.
Yeah. I like that analogy of the T. It's just like super simple. Yeah. Cause it's like you know, that long part of the T is obviously the longest part of the T. And so you don't want to go super deep, you know, into the other stuff, but definitely get some of it. And so I kind of wanted to branch off one thing you said, because it's also something I think a lot about, is this idea of an echo chamber society, because I couldn't agree more. It's I see it with myself. I was just looking through, I was at my parents' house over the weekend, and I got on YouTube on the TV, and it was logged into my little brother's, and I was just kind of looking through it, from seeing his recommended videos, and it's just it's insane how everyone's YouTube is literally it's been manipulated and tailored to them by the AI. And so because I'm like, wow, his recommended videos are completely different than mine. And so then and I'm aware of
You're
these
like,
things.
what
So I
have
think
you
about
been
him.
watching?
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, he watches like Jay Stu and stuff. I think it's a funny Christian YouTuber. Anyways, so I got on my YouTube and just was like comparing. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Mine's all like podcasts and then fitness videos. Like that's it. And which isn't a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing because you can get too entrenched in this echo chamber. And then I find myself thinking, I'll be reading a statistic that says something, I'm just going to make something up just for simplicity's sake, but it'll say something like 80% of Americans don't work out. And I'll be like, really? Because in my world, in my echo chamber driven world of social media and me going to the gym every day, I feel like everybody works out, so even just on a simple scale like that. And then on a more extreme side, you can become politically extreme, which there's obviously a lot of dangers with that extremism. So what are some things, I guess, what are some psychological tools or just practical tools that you think, especially as I think we're called Gen Z and millennials, how can we avoid the echo chamber that social media is just, the AI is just making these echo chambers just darker and darker. And it's like, if you like to work out and watch basketball, then that's all your YouTube's going to be. And that's all your ads are going to be. And that's all. And then you think that's the whole world. And so, yeah, what are some ways, if you had a 20-year-old sitting in front of you and they were entrenched in this echo chamber, what would you say to them to help them expand a little bit?
That's an awesome question, Reese. I have thought a lot about that. I think, as previously discussed, in my 20s, I was really seeking out my identity, right? My credibility. And I was advocating for, like sales are what make the businesses run. Like if you don't have sales, you don't have anything. And I was forming this narrative and dialogue based on what I was good at, right? Or growing up, I know Carter can relate to this, but I used to judge people's value based on how good they were at putting a round orange ball through a hoop.
Yeah.
How dumb is that? But it's because
Yeah.
I was good at basketball. I wanted to judge everybody by that standard, right?
Yeah.
And yet, we grow up a little bit and we realize, pickleball is a sport,
Yeah.
and people like to ski and whatever. And
that's why in high school you're so ruthless at judging people, because you're just
right,
like, oh, that kid's a nerd because he sucks at sports or stuff like that. And then
yes.
when you start to grow up, you're like, dang, why was I so mean?
I even I'll catch myself doing that with like shoes. Like I'll be like, oh, that guy's so dumb. Like he doesn't even have cool shoes on. And then I'm like, not everyone like cares about, shoes as much as I. It's interesting how just like even the littlest of things you can like put yourself in that echo chamber, and then it pushes your views of the world or things that are important to you kind of on other people, and you start judging them with that same standard. That's interesting. I didn't even notice that about myself. That's cool.
Yeah, it's funny because it's relatable.
Well, we do it in high school, Reese, but we don't stop.
Yeah, true.
We never stop. We're always creating a dialogue based on what's going to reflect us best to the world, right? And rather than approaching things with a state of kind of humility, it's almost like, again, like I saw somebody wearing a shirt the other day that said, "I'm an engineer. Save time. Let's just assume I'm right." I'm like, and is that like, does that, I mean, that's exactly a lot of times how we think, right? Like they've got all the answers. We're, the sales guys, the marketers, there's the schmoozers, the BSers, anybody can do that, right? And there's
Yeah.
all in an organization, in politics, and we were just barely talking about sports, whatever it is, we want to think what we do and pick and choose is the best. But to answer your question, I have become an absolute advocate. If you would have told me 2 years ago that I was like going to be a huge fan of diversity, I would have been like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But I think we need to spend time around people that look, act, think differently than us. as much as humanly possible. And as you gather other perspectives, that's when a lot of times that humility comes, and you're like, oh, wow, I never considered that perspective or that insight. That's awesome. That's incredible. And so I think getting out of your comfort zone and and doing things that really challenge your way of thinking is going to help increase your ability to relate to a wider array of people in a big way.
Has there been an experience for you in your life that kind of solidified that to you, where you were like, were maybe talking to someone that you might have not normally, and you learned something and you're like, oh dang, like, all right, this is probably something I need to be doing more of?
When I first got to Dixie State University, I met a few people on campus, and my first thought was, half of this university is stupid. I'm embarrassed to admit. I thought I couldn't understand how they couldn't just get basic, just human interaction, donor relation type of concepts. And then one day, I was talking to somebody from facilities. So a campus is a very diverse place, right? We get criticized a lot of time for especially from the business sector. They're like, oh, you've got these liberals over here, and you've got these people from the humanities over here and the arts here, and you got to make everybody happy and whatever. And it's like, one day I was talking to some people from facilities, and they were trying to explain a concept to me that was probably as simple as like changing a light bulb. And I didn't get it. And I was like, oh, I'm one of their 50%. I'm in their 50%. Mm-hmm. Like, and so I kind of got humbled there a little bit and realized that these other groups and organizations and pods, if you will, they don't just emerge because they're like in some Me Too movement. Like, there's legitimacy to everything. And anyway, so yeah, that really kind of woke me up a little.
Yeah, so it's great. Cool. I had something to say, if Carter.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, there's another you'll find out that I really love Jordan Peterson. Like I said, like, this dude has really influenced me because he's very, very, smart and intelligent, but he just puts words to stuff that you kind of already felt in your heart, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I believe. But one thing he was talking about one time that I think has really helped me keep the echo chamber at bay, especially as far as like politics and personal beliefs go, is the reality of, so, there's the big 5 personality types that most psychologists and psychiatrists worldwide they've all kind of agreed, okay, yeah, every personality can be kind of dialed into these 5, the big 5. And I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that they can predict with close to 100% accuracy where you line up, politically by your personalities. And so this is the reason this idea matters, is because next time you think the thought, oh, my aunt is such an idiot because she's a Democrat, or my uncle Joey won't shut up about politics, he's such a dumb Republican, or whatever, or maybe it's not even in a political stance, maybe it's just, moral values. Next time you think, oh, I can't believe my friend can do drugs every once in a while and drink, it's like, I can't believe they would do that. Well, next time you start having these thoughts where I'm right, they're wrong, I can't believe they're living wrong, it's like that's not wrong, because to them, they have a completely different personality. They perceive the world different than you. And so you got to be careful with thinking that people are living life wrong just because they're not living it the way you live it. And when you go talk to those people, I think that's the best advice, because it's like, yeah, you can watch podcasts and videos and get to know other people's belief systems, which is good. But I think the best thing you can do is actually, in real life interaction, talk with people who are from the other side of the country, or from a different country, or just grew up in a different type of household. And I think that's what serving missions for the church are so good for young people, because while you're on the mission, you're almost, if you were in an echo chamber, which most kids coming out of high school, especially in Utah, kind of are, you kind of get thrust out of that, because you're meeting all these people and you're like, I was meeting people. I served in this city called Hampton, Virginia. and it's a little bit ghetto. And I was meeting people who were in their 60s who could barely afford like a $400 rent a month. And I'm just like, wow, like I didn't even know people like this existed in my little 18-year-old boy brain. I just thought like when you were 60, you had a house or whatever. And they lived a completely different life, 60 years of life that I didn't even know a human could live. And so it's like it forces you out of this echo chamber, and you really start to I guess come to terms with your belief systems and your psyche, that it's like, wow, my way is not the only way to live. Like, and it sounds silly saying this, but it's like most people are having these thoughts daily where you think that your way is the right way to live and everybody else is wrong or dumb or doing it wrong, and it's just not the case. And so it's good to remind yourself of that often, that it's like, okay, I see the world one way. There's almost 8 billion other ways to see it, because there's almost 8 billion other people. So I can't assume mine is the right way,
I remember.
Share. Oh, go ahead, Carter.
I was just gonna say really quickly, like I just wanted to like reiterate. I remember one day I was struggling with one of my companions really bad. Like I was just like, this guy's driving me crazy. He's not being obedient, like it was so hard. And I opened the Adjusting to Missionary Life handbook that I don't know when it came out. It's like relatively new.
Yeah, it's newish. Yeah,
it's like written by a bunch of psychologists. It's not like a church handbook. And I remember going through it, and one of the points was that it was like teaching you about was that everything that someone does makes sense to them. And I remember like since then, and obviously I haven't been perfect at it, but that has like changed my outlook on like life. Because it's like, you might look at someone, you're like, that is the dumbest thing you could have ever done, but to them it makes 100% sense why they're doing that. And it gives you a different sense of empathy and understanding, because you're like, all right, I'm going to try and figure out why that makes sense to them, or I'm going to try and figure out where they're really coming from, because even though it might seem dumb or crazy to me, to them it makes sense.
Thanks for sharing that. So Reese, Stephen Covey is to me the way Jordan Peterson is to you.
Yeah. And I've read a little bit of him.
He talked I think he has the best haircut out there, and so that's why I follow him. But no, he was on a train once, or on a subway, and these kids in the subway car were really acting up, and it kind of agitated him at first, but he tried to ignore it. And then he could see that everybody on the train was getting pretty noticeably upset. And so he finally leaned over to the dad and said, "Hey, sir, would you mind, getting control of your kids? They're really, creating havoc here." And the guy said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We just found out that their mom passed away, and my wife, and I don't know quite how to take it. I'm sure they're the same way." And he said in a minute, he totally changed that judgment. He felt like an idiot. And yeah, we don't know, what people are going through and what their backstory is. You talk about knocking doors in Hampton, Virginia. Guys, this will depress you, but between my mission and my summer sales experience, I was essentially a door-to-door salesman for a 15-year period. I figure I've knocked over 100,000 doors. I have the to prove it. And what I've been in homes, I've influenced, related with, connected, cried, been yelled at from people, from movie stars to CEOs to garbage men to the unemployed, people from all across the country in every different walk of life. And I was doing my own market research. It wasn't surveys, it wasn't focus groups. I was in their sacred spaces, getting their perspective on life. And it was an absolute invaluable experience. I think that's why I did it for so long, because it just helped so much with my well-roundedness. And so, to answer, like, for your listeners, like, hey, is there a way to get there without having to go and knock 100,000 doors?
100,000 doors. Like that. No, that's the only way you can do it. You have to go knock on 100,000 doors. Once you do that, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's your education. So no, it's like you said, Reese, it's reading books, it's listening to podcasts, it's getting different. I love biographies and very random ones, like people that it wouldn't seem to be in my wheelhouse or interest. I love that. And then there's things you can do if you just find that. So I watch this show called Undercover Boss. And
Oh, I've seen a couple
have you
episodes
seen a
of that.
couple episodes?
Yeah.
These founders, these CEOs of businesses, they spend time in boardrooms and on Learjets and in country clubs, and then they spend a day in disguise working the front lines of the very companies they created, and they are cleaning toilets for a
It's
day,
such an interesting show.
and
That
they're
is,
working drive-throughs, and just one day in that environment changes entirely how they lead and run their companies. And so we need to put systems in place that allow us to not lose touch and to become disconnected, whether it's getting out and serving, visiting people in settings where you're not comfortable, or or even going back to your roots. I mean, I'm a big fan of journaling, because if you go back and look, guys, I haven't checked my mission journals in forever. You're not as far removed from it as I am, but I think that'd be pretty eye-opening to me, and how I would potentially advise, future young, missionaries in my house and whatnot. So that's a good exercise as well.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So like you said, kind of to wrap things up, I'd be interested. What's one thing that you would try, and like, if someone came up to you and they kind of heard about what you did, they're like, okay, like I want to kind of start to better my influence. What's one thing that you would kind of to leave them with, to kind of maybe like chew on for a little bit, to kind of allow them to kind of start that process? Because it can be intimidating sometimes to be like, oh man, like I got a lot of long ways to go. I want to be on balance. I don't want to be, a rocket scientist and a comedian. I want to be like right there in the middle. So it might feel a little bit overwhelming to some people. So what's one thing that's pretty simple that you found really helpful in kind of helping start that?
Well, I'll get to that answer in a minute, but I did want to, when you brought that up, Carter, there are shortcuts. If you're like, look, I'm young and I don't have a ton of credibility, but I want influence now, like I need it tomorrow. You can borrow credibility. So for instance, I'm a fundraiser, and I work exclusively with like millionaires, and I've never sold a business for billions, right? So what I'll do a lot of times is legwork. But then when it gets to a certain point, I'll borrow President Williams, or like the athletic director. So it's a little more CEO to CEO. And so if you're feeling like you're experiencing an admiration gap, you may want to find a good mentor, or, in order to get done what you want to get done, who would be a better messenger? Who has credibility in this space that I know that I can borrow from. And and same works on credibility. Like sometimes, or I mean, on relatability, some people are like, I'm just too tired. Like I can't relate to kids anymore. I'm 75. I'm done. Like I'm not going to learn how to use an iPhone or
Yeah.
send, TikTok or whatever. Right. if you have a message that you need to send and you just aren't getting through for some reason, like sometimes I put my 12-year-old in charge of getting my 5-year-old and my 7-year-old to clean up the house, right? Because I
Yeah.
just been away from it for too long. So who would be best to convey this message, right? So you can borrow relatability too. If we're talking to leaders and you just know that there's certain groups, segments of your business that you struggle to relate with, make sure you have a really strong number two that's good in that space or discipline that you can borrow from. So until you have it, Carter, borrow it, I guess would be my answer. And here's a piece of advice that 99% of your listeners won't do. One of them may, and it may just change their life. But have you ever asked somebody you trust or know or respect, maybe a peer or a friend, and just say, what am I missing? Like like, what are my blind spots? What do I suck at? Just come on, give it to me straight. Have either of you guys ever tried that?
I have with my wife.
You're like 3 times a day. My wife,
Yeah,
here's that information.
she will.
You're like, I don't
she-
even ask.
She's gladly honest. No, yeah, her and I actually kind of built an expectation before we got married that we wanted to implement the systems that we have where we would ask that, because we don't want unsolicited advice or criticism, but we decided that we wanted it to be at least a monthly thing where we sit down and say, okay, like, I'm not, like, I want you to be critical and show me, my blind spots and where I'm messing up that I'm not seeing. And so that's invaluable to do that.
You're a lot more mature than most, Reese. I think a lot of people would rather live a life of mediocrity, of limited impact and influence, than to go through an experience like that. But oftentimes there's a huge disconnect between how we perceive ourselves and how we're actually perceived out there. And we often think we have far more credibility than we a lot of times do. And while that's not a fun experience, you kind of weep inwardly a little bit, and
it hurts.
but your progress is significant after you approach things with that kind of honesty. So those are a few tips I have.
Yeah, and then dude, I love that. So I go to the gym every morning, and I put a picture up on my Instagram of me walking into the gym. Like, I'll take a picture of the gym, but I put a quote on there. And today my quote was, think of discomfort as currency. It's the price you pay for your dreams. Wow. I just heard that yesterday, and I was like, that's a really interesting idea, because it's true. And then most people, if you really, really want it, then you're going to have to get really, really uncomfortable. Not just kind of uncomfortable, but way so far outside of your comfort zone that your head is spinning. That's what it's going to take. And yeah, most people don't want to do that. Most people are fine being just chilling, getting by, kind of mediocre. And if that works for them, more power to them. That's cool. But for me, that's not the type of life I want. I want to have influence. And so it's been awesome talking with you. I wish we had more time, Lance. I'm sure we could just sit here for hours and unpack your mind with influence. And we'll have to do it again, because my wife,
we'll have
and
to go take the test, and then we'll have to come back and talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Because my wife and I are both kind of in this transitioning phase where she just got certified to be a life coach. I'm getting certified to be a personal trainer. And so we're kind of in this space where I want to be an employee for a couple years just to really get the hang of being a personal trainer. But eventually my vision is to do my own thing. And, you have to build up both those things, the credibility, the relatability, the influence as a whole. I need to be influential. So I'm definitely going to be coming to you for some advice and for some mentorship. But yeah, it's just really, really great talking with you, Lance. We really appreciate you carving out the time in your day to meet here with us. So yeah, just thank you so much, man.
Happy to do it. Thank you guys for the opportunity. You're on your way. You guys have great minds, and it's fun to follow your success and what you're doing.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it. Well, we'll drop Lance's website in our description, and also we'll post it on our Instagram. But yeah, stay tuned for our next episode. It's going to be exciting. Reese is going to be down here in St. George, and so he'll be able to. I think Riley will be joining us. Is that true?
Yeah,
for the first time.
That's right. That's Riley's my wife, and so we haven't had her on the podcast ever. So, and this time it'll be in person. So yeah, I'm excited. We're going to the TUACon on Friday. And
TUACon, what show are you seeing?
School of Rock.
Oh, I loved it, man.
I'm excited.
So good. Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, we're stoked. And my wife's obviously, she's never been there. She's not from Utah, and she loves theater, like loves it. And so I'm excited because TUACon's beautiful. So it'll be awesome.
Any excuse to go to TUACon's a good excuse,
right?
But this show particularly is good as well. And so, yeah, you'll have a great time.
Yeah, we're excited. We love the movie. So it's like, boom, let's go see the musical. So, but yeah.
All right. Well, we love you, Anderson Lindhardt Nation, and we'll see you for episode 38.
All right. Love y'all. We'll see you later.